it's Haley, and we are going to sit down and talk about my January reading wrap up, the very first one of 2024. And I'm so excited to share the books that I read this month and excited to talk to you guys about them. I read 9 books, and I really had a pretty good reading month. I enjoyed most every book I read, and I'm just excited to share and talk about them. So let's dive right in. I wanted to first share the solo books that I read. One was Credence. This was the first book I read start to finish this year, and I was very hesitant to read this book. It's been on my TBR for a long time, but I always heard kind of conflicting reviews just because I feel like the overall storyline with Tiernan and then the boys, you can kind of tell that it's going to be a polarizing book. And I knew reading it, I was either going to like it or I was going to not like it. And I actually really liked it. Yeah, I really enjoyed this book. I think overall I would probably rate it a solid 4 stars. I thought that there was enough to it. It's quite thick for, I don't know, the topic. I thought it would be a pretty straightforward story. I thought, how crazy could this book be? But there was a lot in it that I appreciated. Uncle Jake, I just kind of whatever about him. He was nice, but I kind of knew he's going to play a little part. But Noah and Caleb, I really, really, really enjoyed. And I just got to say, I am someone who is so happy when she ended up picking Caleb at the end of the book. I loved Noah, no hate on Noah, but I was so happy when she picked Caleb. And I liked this book a lot. I definitely wouldn't say it's like on my top reads ever, but it was a really solid book to start the year off with, and I actually liked it. Okay. Next book, Black Knight by Rena Kent. I am trying to read the Rena Kent universe this year, and so I read one of her books this month, and I really liked this one. In the whole Royal Elite series, I would probably say that Black Knight, out of the 3 couples we've been introduced to, they're probably still like my 3rd place. I would say Aiden and Elsa are number 1 still, Levi and Astrid number 2, and then these 2 I would put as number 3, but I did still really enjoy this book. Again, like a 4-star book. I liked learning about like their relationship, especially because you figure out in the series, in the first 4 books, that they have some sort of like prior event that happens, and then when you find out, there is like that sense of like, oh, now I know, which is nice. And they're great characters overall. The only kind of I had was the plot twist at the end. Without giving too much away, because I don't want these wrap-ups to be too spoiler heavy. I want them to stay relatively spoiler free, just in case you want to dive into any of these books blind. There is a plot twist at the end of this book. I felt it vaguely unnecessary. Like, it just kind of seemed like, why? I mean, you do get more backstory into their parents, which I think is interesting, and I do believe the parents come into play throughout this whole universe more, so maybe I'll appreciate it later on. But there was that little plot twist that I was kind of like, okay, don't know that we needed that, but here we are. So it was just kind of interesting. Definitely did not hate this book at all, though. I really, really enjoyed it. Even with the plot twist kind of weirding me out, I did enjoy this book. It was very good overall. Okay, next up, I am going to put these 2 together because I can just talk about them together. I finished the Shatter Me series finally. I finished Imagine Me and then Believe Me, and I love this series. I have them, they have their own little shelf there. I love the Shatter Me series. I think it is so good. This was a great ending to me. I loved the kind of like epilogue novella from Aaron's perspective. I loved the ending. It was just all the warm and fuzzy wrap up that you could possibly need, especially with just how like heavily dystopian this book series is, and there's so much that comes and goes, and there are a lot of like twists and turns. To me, it was just so nice to have a good solid wrap up that was overall just very easy to digest, and it just left me like, yes. So definitely like a 4.75, 4.8 ending. Loved it. Okay, I only own a physical copy of one of these books, but I read 2 of this series this month. I honestly did it just as a for fun kind of palate cleanser, and that was Ice Planet Barbarians book 1. I also read book 2. This was such an interesting book for me because I thought I would just kind of read it, be like, whatever, and move on. Like, I did not have very high expectations, or really any expectations reading this book, but I actually really enjoyed this. It is definitely a weird book. It's definitely like, it's about being lost on an alien planet, right? But I really enjoyed these books. I totally get why people use them as just like a fun little palate cleanser book. I truthfully think I'll probably do that for the rest of this series. I don't think I would sit and just binge the whole series because you can tell it's going to be kind of repetitive. Like, as each girl gets her own book, it's going to kind of be the same basic idea, I assume. So I overall liked it. I would give it like a 3.8, 4 stars. Next up, I'm so proud of myself. I read 3 Throne of Glass books this month, chugging my way through. My UK covers came in, which I was so excited about. The first one I read with these covers is Crown of Midnight. So I really enjoyed this book. Of course, I was a little bit shattered when Nehemia died. That was uncalled for, Miss Sarah, but Sarah J. Maas did it again with this book. I really, really enjoyed it. I loved getting to like understand more of the plot that you can see coming and developing throughout these books. I felt that it really started to take shape in this book, so I appreciated that. And just the Chaol, Celaena Dorian character development, I really enjoyed. And to me, this just kicked up the series a lot when I got to this book. Everything after this felt like it stemmed from this book. Next up, Heir of Fire. You guys, I would give this like a 4.85, 4.9. Like, this was so good. I would say 5 stars, but then I read Queen of Shadows, so I'm adjusting a little bit. I loved this book. The moment that Rowan got introduced, I was like, oh, it's happening. It's happening, you guys. It's happening. Like, I was so excited. This book was so good. And then getting introduced to Manon as well. At first, I was like, this is a lot of POVs that we're going between. But as you go on, you're kind of like, okay, I can handle it. I really enjoyed this book. And again, just like watching the plot develop in this series is so beautiful. It is a book series where the plot does not stop. And I love that. The character development also doesn't stop, which is truthfully why I feel like this series is so good, and I'm not even done. I loved this book. So good. Okay. Grand finale of this video. Queen of Shadows. Now, this book, I know I haven't finished the series, and I am sure that the rest of the series is going to be friggin' fabulous. But as of right now, this is my 5-star book. This is the first 5-star read of the year. You can write that down, take notes. Queen of Shadows, I think as of right now, is the best book I've ever read in my life. I loved this book. I loved this book so much. The first third, I would say it was like neck and neck tied with Heir of Fire. But the last 2/3 of this book, I was like, wow, I didn't think it could get this good, but here it is. I loved this book. I really don't know what else to say. Like, Dorian, I appreciate so much more in this book. Chaol is Chaol, whatever. But Miss Aelin, Mr. Rowan, everybody, Manon, I appreciate. I truthfully do not know. I don't know how to describe how this book made me feel when I ended. Like, I was so hesitant to read. I'm going to try the tandem read this next month. A little bit of a spoiler alert for my February TBR video, but I'm going to read the tandem, and I'm so excited. But this book was so good. So good. And I just... I don't want to give too many spoilers. If you haven't read Throne of Glass, I really don't want to say too much. But just the ending. The ending of this book is life-changing. It is so good. It made me understand. I mean, I love the series before this, but this book made me understand why people do not shut up about it. It is so good. And it just was the best book to end January with, in my opinion. So yeah, with that, it concludes this video. this month was such a good productive reading month for me, and it just put me in such a good mood to just chug along in this year's reading. It was just the perfect way to start the year as a reader. I'm very, very excited to continue with Throne of Glass. I will probably upload my February TBR video next. I know that it'll probably also have a little book haul with it. I'm going to try and combine those together to get them all uploaded. But yeah, I am so excited. The books that have been coming out that I've been reading, they've just been really good lately. So I hope you are also having an awesome start to your reading year, and I look forward to seeing you guys in the next video. Have an awesome week.